Is that thing being held on my hair?
Oh, the kids these days.
I used to
Oh, I
get
forgot
so
what the
much trouble in high
subject
school
is.
for my hair.
Well, I only
That's
have
hilarious.
sights. Oh, now I got it.
Okay.
It's going up.
Are you not? Is that, can we touch that? Is that a, no, that's probably not even a thermostat, that look like a license.
I feel like those things in these rooms never work.
Yeah.
Oh, it's definitely hot.
I've like tried a few times and I've never really tried.
All right. Y'all both good?
Gucci.
Marijuana reform is coming, but will be impacted without federal legalization. Rating 14, the federal government section that chooses to enforce the CSA will find it difficult to stop the momentum in favor of legalization of the marijuana industry is flawed. So hard to create states are considering legalizing it. The Ogden Amendment does not put federal government back. So excuse me, the pressure on the marijuana industry canon and 12 the Ogden Amendment was never to shield the federal person versus where the business of the marijuana violation of the CSA state laws are not defense made clear. They will go to use criminal and some of the CSA against medical marijuana industry all licensed marijuana being prohibited under federal law. Therefore, obtaining firearms coupled with the refusal of an increasing number of big business in the industry. It can also pursue not just those in the business of manufacturing and distributing marijuana, but also those legitimate businesses doing business within the feds. Not for marijuana dispensary jails, those in the squeeze of the federal government imposing on the industry now. Kill justice effectively. Advantage one is prisons, disproportionate law enforcement, substantial sorts of racism, assumptions, immigration, hierarchy, screaming, the drug war DPA, and 14, the drug war racial discrimination by law enforcement, discrimination, drug war misery, suffering communities, and college mass criminalization of people of color, particularly young African Americans, is a profound system of racial controls that drug criminals were lifelong penalties that institutions involved drug convictions, creative criminals, and class facts for millions of Americans who may be prohibited from voting, being licensed, access, and public assistance, and any number of other activities and opportunities. And marijuana violations push people of color into the prison pipelines and states and the various relationship between law enforcement and the prison industrial complex learned. And 11, the racial bias numbers are not a result of a system-wide phenomenon. There are 101 arrests which are overwhelmingly black people. Doesn't make sense to talk about bad apples for young, low-income African American Latinos who use marijuana less than young whites priority. Face numerous barriers and hurdles that come around with the drug and marijuana possession and seriously harm their life chances. Marijuana arrests are now an intrinsic crime policing and no mass arrests of whites for marijuana use, such racial disparity and racial character of the law. Carlin and police who arresting minorities for marijuana use, sales and distribution, institutional racism, cure, and simple black people are 3.7 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana. This racist use of drug race incarcerated subjugating black males in urban areas where there are few drugs and drugs where drugs are looking for lack of job opportunity. The only benefit to society is those who are employed by the prison industrial complex and cost and advice where marijuana might be described as a tool of racial oppression. This becomes about 10, 15, or even 30 times more likely to be arrested. There's a drug connection between so-called war crimes and racial bias, surgery, devastation, death, and destruction. And legal marijuana causes prison closures. Colorado approves Item 13. Colorado's closures to prison after appointing a mix of reasons that include reactions about for marijuana-related crime and fewer prisons being less lobbying count. On 11, CCPOA's members being able to do is pay about $80, with which CCPOA allocates $8 billion to lobbying. More prisoners leads to more prisons requires more guards, means more dues, paying members and fundraising capability, and fundraising, of course, translates into political influence in prison industrial complex where self-advocates worthy of living and others are dying, reduces silent genocide, and prison confined. The prison industrial complex where it is help secure the authority to get their power to structure privileges and processes through by which is unequal farmers maintain, include raising down images that perpetuate stereotypes as criminals and media facilitating political gain, eliminating social and political dissent by people of color, people, immigrants, and others who meet the demands of self-determination by organizing power in the United States. Repression, the prison industrial complex requires an ever-increasing quantity of prisoners. The prison industrial complex is exactly what it is designed to do, to disappear and kill precisely those who present the greatest threat to state power. Prisons also have the effect of disappearing people running them with physical, socially dependent sounds and voices, and legalization cuts off the spigot of funding to law enforcement, impairs ability to conduct versus activities. Campbell and 14 cannabis still carries more punishment than alcohol. Even or if you happen to be a shade other than white, that's a rock part of the path towards legalization. It's not going to happen until police departments across the country stop relying on pot arrests as a means of generating money for themselves. Marijuana arrests now cover 52% of all drug arrests, so they're about controlling communities of color, maintaining a city full of federal and state funds and the local law enforcement efforts. We need to reschedule weed or see some top-down drug to civil justice. Terrible racial bias. Some solution is just to fully legalize weed, and revenue shortfalls lead to budget cuts, not shit. Buffalo Crew, Shady and Tad, revenue shortfall firms laid off in the police force after hearing sales tax revenues are tracking about half of last year's receipts were returned with a recommendation of the census of these police force be seriously reduced and benefits from participation in access to comparable drug economy are insufficient on balance. The plan provides better racial outcomes, Williams, and aid that deadly bills and close opportunities push them to attain goal. Of course, the local people with drug tests, which are who want to use keep out of many shots and work in the informal economy, allowing them to avoid police and jail. This is particularly true in communities of color. There's more active participants in illegal economic activities. The key problem in incarceration and the key force behind incarceration is the war on drugs. More than 1 out of every 100 adults are locked up, including 1 in 9 black men. It comes with too much blowback and making people vulnerable to the state. We must end the war on drugs and free youth and political actors from the contradiction that they must but cannot rely on the informal economy. The criminalization of the informal economy makes them more vulnerable to the carceral state and thus demobilizes them politically as well. These conditions may explain why American cities do not burn, and the act will not fix everything, but the state reforms and legalization regimes are a necessary step in ending the drug war and substantially reducing targeting Franklin. And 14. Marijuana prohibition turns back around people and prohibition through passing legalization laws will reduce this racial disparity while this law will eradicate systemic racism in our criminal justice system completely. It is one of the most effective things we can do to address it concrete ways is to call around laws for people of color. No more arrests for marijuana. While the racial disparities in marijuana possession arrests have been reprehensible, long-lasting consequences, most of the stubbornness changes nothing. About the new law starts with confusion between decriminalization and legalization. There's a profound difference between hodgepodge of laws known collectively as decriminalization and unprecedented legalization. Because of the ambiguity in the states and decriminalization, cops still arrest users with small amounts of marijuana due to technicalities. In Colorado, police won't be able to racially profile the claiming they smell marijuana or saw it in plain view. Thus, the claim the United States should legalize nearly all marijuana in the United States. Advantage 2 is the FDA. State legalization signals a politicized FDA when federal action allows a strong FDA rule at 8 and 10. The current efforts to legalize from marijuana without initiative seriously threaten the FDA authorized process of approving safety. Pharmaceutical drugs must be approved by the FDA. The drugs approval process should be circumvented. It should not be circumvented. And full state systems can be expanded and manageable to risk the critical protections of national drug legislation efforts about the FDA would not serve public health. Only discipline systematic trials can establish whether there is any medicinal value. Ballot initiative laws create medicine by popular vote. Before modern farmer and field was probably the urban remedies. FDA would system is being marijuana addiction. Scientists on both sides say more research needs to be done. The federal government shut down trials until the federal government relents. Marijuana will be fought at all local levels. In aquaculture and food-based biotech are inevitable. FDA credibility is key to advocacy and equal population trauma. And 11, the U.S. has been an important leader in biotech advances and provide tools that can help countries that aren't reason for health benefits. Little of this will happen without the leadership of the U.S. has been providing on science-based regulatory approaches on one of the most sustainable forms of protein is fish. World biotech and aquaculture represents one of the key tools that can enable humanity to expand protein production. The amendments and semester of science regulatory oversight in the FDA process is subject to political intervention. It signals that the U.S. may see this leadership position biotech is vital to the world in the present and in the future. It is imperative the U.S. stay its course in Senate, not letting politics interfere with the science-based regulatory system that is canopy of the world. The U.S. can serve as a role model in the use of biotech and act transformation and extinction causes disease, terrorism, and economic cloud. Brown and 9, the practical stability is the potential for food crises to cause government clouds. Future actions could bring on global civilization as demand faster than supply. The growth faster for food prices faster than supply. The resulting inflation puts severe stress on the government. Interventions will break down at an ever-increasing rate. The main threat to international security is failing states fail when governments can no longer provide food security. Failing states are a source of terrorist weapons, refugees, threatening stability everywhere. Their goal of each nation depends on a functioning network of states to control the spread of disease. The end of the monetary system to control terrorism. If the system for controlling diseases, humanity will be in trouble. Enough states to integrate their fail will threaten disability, global civilization, self-sustainable genomes are key to survival. Trouble us and 2K genome technology can enable new crowds to be constructed in months of hundreds of volcanoes. Demolition force such as great and equivalent explosion would destroy civilization. Only those with agriculture technology sufficiently advanced has a chance of survival. Colliding asteroids or another problem. Technological advance may be the only buffer between us and annihilation. And excuse me. Aquaculture solves global food crunch, prevents deforestation. Strasser and 14, we're heading for breakdown of food systems. We're going to nurse the billions on this planet. More and more protein is going to active from aquaculture. Aquaculture is one of the most resource efficient ways to produce protein from an environmental footprint perspective. It's very efficient as it stands now. 40% of non-water surfaces of Earth are being used for agriculture. A whopping 30% is being used not to feed us directly, but to feed pigs. One of the effects is that agriculture is driving massive deforestation, and deforestation will cause extinction. Turbine and allowing human activities causing extinction rates that are 1,000 times greater than those which have occurred naturally. The behavior is upset in the delicate ecological balance, which are like deforestation or the habitat destruction by deforestation that is the greatest destroyer that is primarily responsible for the mass extinction of the world's species. It is the obvious belief simply people fully believe, comprehend the effect that these extinctions will have in foreclose and true diseases and ensuring human survival. They would recognize the current rates of biodiversity loss represent nothing less than a slowly evolving emergency. And the new FDA commissioner solves all causes. Bob Miller and 9 commissioner says a need for a strong FDA and outline new food safety enforcement measures. A strong FDA's credibility with the public. A strong FDA is transparent and explains its decisions. Strong FDA enforces the law, setting her Hammer outlined several improvement enforcement steps the agency was taking to catch adulteration, false labeling, or inadequate product quality, and the plan mandates the FDA regulation of marijuana column, and 2, drug legalization entails market availability. The trade will become legal manufacture, transportation, sale, purchase, possession, and use any other prescription, non-prescription drug approved by the FDA. The FDA is the national regulator of legalized drugs.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
What is a prison?
What is a prison? In the context of the affirmative, a prison is a building created by the law, sometimes owned by private companies, where people deemed criminals by the state are sometimes placed for certain amounts of time because a court decided that they were guilty of something.
How does voting
or not.
act change the fact that certain bodies are deemed more criminal than others?
Sure. So the affidavit claimed to change the ideological causes, but I think that we're taking away a major tool of enforcing those ideologies, i.e., policing people
What
for
are
marijuana
those
possession.
ideological causes?
So one of them, for example, is anti-blackness. There's homophobia.
So you stop
transphobia,
anti-black violence?
We're not stopping all of it, but we're taking away a tool of that
So
violence.
you just reduce it.
Food is short now, so where's ours?
Food is short now.
Yeah.
I don't know where
What
yours
food have
is.
you
The
but
reason
provided
food
in
is
the
short
food?
now is because of a lack of biotechnology.
Right, so
Food's
where's our
super
food?
duper cheap.
Right, so why did you not?
Right, the
bring
reason
for
food is
everybody in the room?
because we don't have biotechnology yet or aquaculture.
Okay, sweet. What does
Yeah,
this
okay.
debate do to stop marijuana reform from passing?
What does this? I didn't hear the beginning of your
Yeah,
question.
what does this debate do to stop the marijuana reform from passing that you talked about? Very beginning.
Well, sure. So we think this debate trains us in the debating of what marijuana legalization could look like, what that process could look like, what the effects would be,
Sweet.
and that skills and knowledge are things that we can take into broader action in
When do
pressuring
those
the
skills,
legislation.
when do those skills get applied?
Whenever we have an opportunity to engage in some kind of process that would, I don't have anything on my calendar that's I'm gonna call my congressman
so how are
today,
you
but
able to
it's
access?
something that we are able to do outside of this debate.
Actually, I'm working on a mayoral campaign this summer,
That's
and I've been
Good
talking
for you.
to
I'm really
the candidate
excited for
Charles Robert Bone.
Yeah, I'm so
I
excited.
want to reform.
okay.
It's
That's
a really cool opportunity.
sweet. Your Williams and 8 evidence. It ends by saying these conditions may help explain why American cities do not burn.
Yep.
What do you mean American cities don't burn?
Sure. So our agreement is that people who could be engaged in radical revolution, instead of being able to do that, cops are just go up to them and say, "Oh, I think I smelled weed on you," and arrest them for marijuana possession. The argument is that this kind of illogical tool of policing is used to prevent and target people.
Why is
who-
marijuana the only mechanism?
It's not
by
the
which
only
police-
mechanism, but we think it's a large mechanism. It's 52% of all drug arrests. It's also a lot easier to claim you smell marijuana on someone than to be like, "Oh, I was 5 feet away from you, but I'm pretty sure I saw track marks." It's just a lot easier to
Yeah.
police. Not that it doesn't happen.
Last
but it's a
question,
large
what infectious disease does the app seek to control?
There are a lot of them. There are things like microbial diseases developing in lakes and ponds, or antibiotic resistant
So you wanna,
diseases coming. There are viruses. There are lots of things.
What's your name again? Adam?
Maddie.
Maddie. And your name is
Rahul. And what's y'all's name?
Nicole.
Mad.
Nice to meet you.
So here, I'm gonna go case and I'm gonna go off. Walked outside, surprised I didn't die. Stepped outside and saw blood in the sky. Hoping that my eyes was a lie, would imagine, but I couldn't even try. And I started to wonder why. Why did Mike have to die? The media said he stole, but I know that was a lie. I guess because he was a nigga, it was easier to pull the trigger. Sometimes I wonder why we have to die. Look around and know the real reason why helicopters in the sky. Walking around Ferguson, hoping that one day I can fly. Like my letter from Paul was, my wings never arrived. We were searching for justice, but like pieces of shit we couldn't go find. And it goes back to my original question. Why did Mike have to die? But shit, Mike wasn't the only one. It was baby's mom, sobs of confusion. We were still praying that this was all just an illusion, because it was my home that I was losing. They said we were savages. I guess they came to that conclusion. Locked us up around 9, standing in place behind crime. And the media kept lying, and niggas just kept dying. Peacefully, we was trying. Rakia Boyd, Ayanna Jones, Tiffany Edwards, Larita Reyes. These are the names that they don't want us to know. My home, I wasn't sure if I should stay or go. But the police gave me the answers to all my questions. Because after they threw the tear gas, well, here I am. I'm not in Ferguson, but I feel the need to scream, hands up! Don't shoot!
Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! Fuck what you thought was the truth. Hands up! Don't shoot!
And they just kept shooting, and they said it was because we were instilling and shit that was already on. They could tell you that we have come so far. I guess they was talking about slavery, but it's hard for me to believe that with any moment a white man can come up and take me. See, this is not about me, and this is not about you. This is not about the story of what your house seems to be the truth. This is about why we are here. And we are putting our hands up and telling you not to shoot. We were hungry, starving for justice, calling on each other and realizing that the system was reckless. Our unity was one of our biggest lessons. And together we screamed, hands up! Don't shoot!
Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! We're here to teach the youth about the truth. Hands up! Don't shoot!
But if the police need to make up new laws in response to oppress us, make it illegal to stand still and bus stop and tell me what it's used while we're learning more about this system, rules stopping the abuse produced. When do we legalize conversations on legalizing weed, take the war on drugs and war? To be more accurately described as a one-sided war against black lives. When someone can get shot for something that's tripping about and bump right to the gas station, shot for knocking on the door in a strange neighborhood, shot for being in the house during police raid against your parents. This cannot be chalked down for misbehaving like a criminal, nor can it be reduced to not knowing enough about the law. Who gets to make a court life or death decision, and whose life is worthy of defending, and who gets to free from them? You hear the words, hands up. Who gets to walk away? Why is it that the one in front of the gun gets to level? If we need to know who the fuck the shooter was, we were shot down here online. The police, the way in which this space is always changing, rearranging. The terrain is always different. So when our hands go up, when you hear the words "don't shoot," I come out. We are illustrating to you that this war is one-sided. We are forcing you to focus on the one that's holding and aiming the gun. We're communicating to you that there is someone in front of the gun who is worthy of life. The role of violence determines who best performance and methodology transcends racialized, sexualized violence, both negative and active agency. See, we were never meant to be here. The world is not just, the prison is just not these four walls, but instead is our lives. Project Lord Project 2014. We have been outraged, saddened by the murders and brutalization of trans women of color. Tiffany Edwards, Rita Reyes, Mia Henderson, Candy Hall, and Yasmin Sanchez, the violent targeted cisgender, non-trans women of color, Renisha McBride, Ursula Orr, Stephanie McDonald, and Kathleen Johnson, and Marlene Pinnock, and the violent murders of cisgender black men and men of color, including Mike Brown, Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin, to name only a few from the long list that continues to grow. We are deeply upset that the recent viral YouTube video of a black trans woman at the Franklin Atlantic and subway platform where countless people, including the MTA employees, refuse to intervene and stop the violence. We cannot even begin to name or know all the people who have been victims of all these hate, racist and anti-black violence. Islam Nestle, who was brutally beaten by the community members across the house from the policing precinct in Harlem of 2013 is a critical moment to move beyond political, racial, gender borders and consider how to build collective safety for all of our communities. In order to build safety, we must transform the root causes and conditions that contribute to the justified police violence, hate violence, racist and anti-immigrant and anti-black violence that persist against our community's accountability and the justice that our community deserves. And the countless other instances of hate and police violence have been constantly and without fail disrupting violence of predominantly black and Latinas who are directly connected to the heightened anti-black and anti-immigrant violence targeting our communities. Hate violence and police violence are deeply rooted in the historical legacy of systematic racism, population control, homophobia, xenophobia, fear of all people of color, indigenous communities, particularly immigrants and transphobia. Police hate and violence are all extensions of systematic exploitation and slavery used to criminalize our communities and police our bodies. The right to self-gender determination, agency, and survival. It is our responsibility and duty to make the connection between the murders of black and Latina, trans women, and the rest of violations against LGBTQ of color and the violent sexual and physical attacks against them of their oppression. These violence lead to the brutalization and violence of non-trans women, men of color, and the false pretense of the protect and serve. But we are all used to control and target our lives. We have based on our race, physical ability, ethnicity, sexuality, gender identity, economic status, and our citizenship. The solution of active violence cannot be found within the very systems that are brutalizing and murdering our people. These systems were built to tear us down. We are committed to and continue to know to help uplift and organize against all forms of hate, communal and police violence and genocide. We know that we have the power, the resilience, and the strength to transform the culture of violence, which regards our communities expandable, invisible, and dangerous. The words of the Lord, we were never meant to survive. Our survival, our continued resilience, our continued efforts for social justice are directed us to the challenges of systematic oppression. We must at all costs do whatever we can to lift up, protect, and one another in our interconnected struggles of liberation. See, your first advantage, we don't believe the way in which you even go about making generalized food is going to be something that's going to be good for us. It's the same food that they drop off in the hood that has put our bodies on the line. And knowing that the world is just a prison for our bodies, we say this about the empowerment and uplifting that we can do. It's a competing message, babe. Okay. A interpretation of the first was to defend legalization of top areas that's tied to the defending of the bodies and figures of voice. Activists acknowledge those being spoken to in the speech makes all speech act political. B, violation of criminal does not legalize marijuana. They specifically present a plan of how the United States might do so. C, vote neg on presumption. A, presumption of affirmative does nothing but affirming. This debate we're not going to use any of the advantages discussed. Vote neg on presumption. B's limits their infinite amount of potential plans and policy proposals that affirmative could be out, but there are limited ways in which the body of this debate even begin to understand legalization. See predictability. Our interpretation means the negative only has to defend that they and the other team does in this debate, not some random harm identified by them. The United States is an unpredictable body. Politics are not. De-education, topic-specific education, app interpretation encourages bad debate, including conditionality, plan, inclusive counterplans, international BI, process picks, and a host of other bad things. See, activism is good. Plan focused debate requires you to invest our activity in bureaucratic institution or opposed to individual agency displaced and produce bad citizens who are slaves to the state. Fairness ground, app interpretation destroys our disadvantage ground based on individual action that forces us to defend the United States in action that made it impossible to be negative. See, is marginalized voices that requires the discussion of United States policy instead of individual action. Marginalized participants whose views are excluded from the policy-making process. The impact of psychological violence and refusal to supporting the death and the minority of subjects in debate is not what you do, but it is how you do it. The affirmative should have to defend the tradition and style of in which they have participated. Debaters choose their style. This means they have to defend all bad forms of education that clearly exist in the style of debate that they are engaging in.
Can I ask about the last argument you made? Why do we have to defend everything that every policymaker has done?
Excuse me?
You said that we have to defend the entirety of our style, everything that's been done in our style and form.
You
Why do we
have to defend everything you just did in the morning scene.
Everything you just did? Okay,
Yeah,
that seems to be incompatible with the argument you just made about how like there are lots of different kinds of bad education in our style. We have to defend all of them.
You just released bad education.
Because we think that plan-focused debate is a terrible model.
Why?
Because, like, for several different reasons, like, there are people I mean who, the way in which my body interacts with the United States is something that is going to be totally different, right? And on that, I say you need to introduce yourself when you come inside of this room, especially if you want to talk about drugs and saving niggas, right? You need to tell me who you are.
Okay, sure.
Right?
So,
you want to save niggas, who are you?
Sure. So why is it not good for people to advocate for change that they may not have experienced the harms of, but they can understand the harms?
Also, it's not just like advocating for change that you heard about on the news. What about the shit you experienced? What about what actually happens, right? That's what we need to talk about. You have displaced and discomforted. Well, you have displaced yourself from the way in which you have oriented the 1AC.
Sure.
Where were you at in the 1AC?
Sure.
Why did I have to ask you your name? Why did you not introduce me when you came in here to talk about you for your name?
Sure. So obviously, like, it's no secret I'm white. I experience shit differently than you. So if I obviously have not experienced the violence of the prison industrial complex the same way that y'all may have, why should I then ignore that because I haven't experienced that, or how am I supposed to approach that policy?
It's not that you should ignore that, but where do you fit in the conversation is a better place.
Okay, so it's a
Right,
question of
that's
the
a better
1AC
starting
did not include an explanation of like my position in relation to
That's not
legalization
it,
of
but
marijuana.
yeah,
Or
that's part of it.
okay, so what's the additional component?
Okay,
Like,
we
what
say-
were we missing is the question I'm getting.
Well, I mean, like, I think that what Nicole explained
explained is a pretty good portion of the framework argument, but also the interpretation would necessitate that your speech act within inside of the space would legalize marijuana.
Okay, sure. So how does
We
a
say you
speech
don't
act
actually do
legalize?
anything, which is problematic,
Okay,
right?
how does a speech act legalize?
It doesn't. That's the problem.
Well, okay, so
that's the
you
problem with what your 1AC does. You
Okay.
don't do anything. You play pretend and tell niggas I'm going to
Okay,
deliver
sure.
you some
So
food.
sure.
We
So
don't like
in
playing
that
pretend
in
anymore.
that-
I'm still
in that-
hungry.
in that vein, you say the role of the ballot is to like determine who thus transcended racialized and sexualized violence. How
Sure
does Rashad determine whether or not it has been transcended?
Okay, well, we say performativity, i.e. who does an action that allows us to view the way in which we can transcend and begin to understand the racialized and sexualized violence, right?
Okay.
Like
So
that's a determining factor, like who
sure.
did it, who didn't.
Sure. So the war is one-sided. Who's conducting the war?
We say like agents of
racialized,
racialized, sexualized violence are conducting the war.
Okay, sure. So why is it bad to check some of the agents of the violence, i.e., remove the law that allows them to check?
I'm trying to tell you, you didn't check nobody.
Okay, I'm asking a theoretical question.
Yeah.
We don't
Legalization-
fuck with theory no more. We want
Okay,
reality.
so
Okay, I'm sorry, man. Thank you.
can I get the ones?
I mean, you can
Or
get
like the
the
cards.
framework.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and the Angelo project.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't get poetry.
Oh yeah, that's
That's not it, sorry.
Stop, bro.
928.
Case.
Yes. What?
you said 928.
I think I'm actually gonna go with framework this.
That's what's up. I didn't like ask what the word was. I was just like labeling my flows more than anything.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, my interest.
It's fucked
Are
up.
y'all doing no?
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
cute.
they-
Like,
they did that.
oh, okay. How much did y'all
No,
take?
it's like 30 seconds.
Yeah, we have
Okay, got it.
928 left.
Okay.
Well, they took 32.
Sorry.
You're good. You want some paper? You good?
I think I don't need a Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Log off and then log back on.
Oh, I'm on the guest. We always do this.
I don't know what you guys, is that a different presumption?
Yeah.
What's the?
And then debate 2015 WOC count. WOC.
Who'd y'all debate yesterday?
Texas K something.
Chaos.
Yeah.
Kilpatrick.
We called them GM during the 2 hour and they got real hyped about that.
You called them what?
Yeah,
Texas
someone called them
GM,
Texas
that's it.
GM. And
They
they were
got bad.
No,
they
they
were
were
like,
like,
that's fine.
they were like fighting over who gets to be Jishnu.
Like, they're both white. I miss just me.
Hey, Judgment, what's this really will be?
Yeah, he says.
Then we debated UNLV about 4 times, and then we had Bob,
Which UNLV team?
DB.
The order is gonna be framework and then the case.
Almost there.
Just tell me when y'all are ready.
Did we get an email to us?
Oh, is it on? I'm on. Hi, Dad. Thanks for watching. And hi, Sally. I love you.
That's pretty cute.
Your parents watching?
Probably not now, but
They're gonna watch later?
yeah. Okay, now that we got that out of the way. Are y'all good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. The role of the ballot is to stimulate the enactment of the plan. Imagining government action is key to dignity and activism, ties us to others and makes us work to prevent atrocities. No significant we want the institution to express our desired institution, express our autonomy as an expression of autonomous beings whose opinions have weighed our concerns of individual autonomies and express the concern. And symbolically expressing something, the way to testify in reality, we will not truncate the political realm. We wish to accomplish something the relational stance leads us to express. Ties to our fellows, absence of expression would leave us bereft of socially validity, relatedness, symbolic validation. Our importance can occur only through action, speaking in the name of you hold to live in society and identify with the place and be ashamed of things who you cannot personally relate or not. For which you're not personally responsible, eliminating such expression would leave us ashamed of society whose voices are silent and connecting our critique to an advocacy for the legalization of marijuana provide the training ground for broader reform. Take 14 legalization of marijuana is the only alternative to draconian laws drafted in the war for the past 2 decades. Marijuana possession constituted 8 burglary in the rest 2007, more than 7 million Americans were behind bars. The government increases the opinion responsible for drug use, responsible for racial fears and stereotypes. Drugs remains symbolically a menace to middle white class values. Individuals in civil society, advocacy community must support the serious struggle. Potential coalition partners who can understand the need for reform to be the training ground for a new generation of leadership and addressing the larger problem of mass incarceration from people who long for the days of political education, voter mobilization, legal reform, group solidarity, and political empowerment expressed in the modern civil rights movement. The matter of decriminalization is right for galvanizing collaboration for the grassroots one by ordinary people. Change everything in conscience begins to do inside marijuana, then leaders will come around without reticence to free the marijuana debate needs to be reframed and remove all street-level penalties against the youth. This is our exit strategy. Reforms the only path to reversing the municipal trend minorities face in America. The framing argument on this role is that there's the permutation. We can include both forms of education. We prove there's any value to our form of education is not mutually exclusive with theirs. Now we have decided all people must advocate for reform in order for any change. This means that our affirmative and all its impacts or reasons are impacts against their framing and other limits. Our argument is good because it means that we get a lot of different types of education, which means we get a plurality of ways to engage within the world. Transcending experience allows for broader education because we don't just have to talk about things that have happened past in our life, but rather we can talk about things that we think should happen in the future. These process counterplans our cities are pretty sick because they teach us the language of leads, which allows us to engage in institutions and make political change within the world. Debate allows us a place to make your voice heard, which means that even if voices are included in the political realm, the status quo, fiat, and things like that allow us to change that. Now, experience-based arguments are self-defeating. They render individual pathologies, collective ways of thinking and knowing, treating continued experiences, wicked truth, bomber intent. Individuals must be understood as theoretical that enable subjects to be the world in particular by substantial benefit identity or implicit explanation to the social world and constitute a relation of power experience, and not something that simply occurs. Is always a work of interpretation that is collectively produced. It is not individuals who are the agents of epistemological communities. The distinction is crucial. It's not for the experience of discrimination that makes one, but rather the paradigm through which one attempts to understand the act of discrimination that is not necessarily to actually have the experience oneself in order to make the identification is accepted. The experiences are not constructs which can be transferred with transparency. We think there's something politically self-defeating insisting one can understand the experience or comment upon it. One has actually had the experience of privilege knowledge plans on the basis of direct experience on the then on claims of authenticity can lead to a narrow identity of limit, mandatory professional movements and organizations. It's not possible to understand the experience. What the point is they're listening to each other, such a view seems to authorize privileged groups or ignore the discourse to disadvantage ones or place exclusive responsibility for addressing just within the approach of wrestling themselves. This allows their cause to become our cause, not a form of appropriation, but through the administration of subjectivities that enable recognition. What their struggle is also our struggle of recognizing that they are not equally available and powerful for all subjects to understanding our identity. Given needs to give way for understanding which exists from the socially contingent on the work of a particular epistemological community. Such understanding was postmodern access to post-racial theory where race is real, where race is not communities that confer identities are constituted through their shared epistemological frameworks are not understood by shared characteristics of the member. Conceived as irreducible the epistemological community, there may be differences between those who recognize the injustice or disadvantage while being beneficiary. For example, white people we privilege the importance of a shared political commitment to equalities of for negotiating such differences focus on the activities individuals participate in rather than the characteristics of identity possessed, identified identity is thus defined further as a function of activity located in the particular social relation rather than the nature of the origin of the 2AC. It's not too late for me to explain my social marijuana relationship to the topic. I have a friend who went to jail for dealing marijuana because his parents kicked him out of his house and he couldn't afford to pay his rent with just his job now. The case where they conceded a couple of distinction scenarios. First is deforestation, second is GMOs, and third is food shortages, means extinction is inevitable in the world of the negative. It's a question whether you want to try and solve it. They make this food argument that's just unique and sort of the reason that there isn't food, and these status quo specifically cheap food, and the reason there are food deserts is because of the lack of agriculture biotech, which make good food and healthy food cheap. Now permutation do both. We can both exist the police at a micro level and a macro level. They conceded 4 separate lectures on our prison's advantage. First that we reduce the number of police on the street, which means their ability to shoot people, and severely reduce. Second that we reduce the number of private prisons, which third reduces the influence of the prison lobby, which means that they can't pass bills on the future and circumvent our reforms. Fourth, they concede our Williams argument, which indicates that people who try to make micro movements always get co-opted by the state and put in jail on the pretense of drug charges. Now they concede that we lead to the end of the war on drugs, so all the arguments about the war on drugs at large being bad do not apply. Now even if the law is bad, the alternative will take a long time, and in the interim, the act does good things like reduce the number of police officers or private prisons, which create reforms, but do not deny the only future. And then legalization of marijuana is a useful starting point, and the war on drugs and the permutation is not a method of co-option, but rather is a test of competition. We should engage in these debates regarding institutional reform within the system rather than radical alternatives. Look at 14, and which was also system democratic by very large second the citizen appeal for us. And there's really evidence is there a reason to destroy American criminal justice. There's something through these criticism measures to try to address the solution to the problem of race criminal justice, not total overall the system that's rendered the justice system the scapegoat. The system feels the effects of those problems, it does not cause them. Our system rightly aims to reduce dangerous behavior to cast these on America. Justice system is to ignore the enormity, but the problem is that I saw only versus potential in large ways in which America's built improvement. Institution will take root in the kind of environment that's strong. Justice system abroad. We should not go complacent instead of engaging in debate about the American approach to criminal justice. At least have condemned the entire enterprise system. We're told is broken, but the rhetoric that feels wholesale stuff on the system not only will fail to achieve any meaningful change of serious strength. It is unrealistic and uncharitable to portray the system as an engine of repression. The American justice system strike a valuable for another strikes out the balance between protecting and the incident and making the guilty between procedural protection and administrative reality. Such qualities are hardly the hallmark of a failed system. There's plenty of room for reform, but let us not forget our consistent virtues as we seek to correct advice. Otherwise, any legitimate concern will be lost in the dim diatribe. Now, moral tunnel vision is complicit with evil. Isaac too. Calls for diplomacy are empty because they're not accompanied by the kind of hard diplomacy can attack and address problems to do something required. They did something about contemplate try to choice so much moral goodness, eliminate utility, and unyielding to serve the moral goodness under the political possibility, period, one intention to not ensure the achievement of one intent in the world of violence, moral impurities, and form of complicity and injustice, politics, also as much about unintended consequences, intentions, the effect, rather than the motive, that it must be moral absolutism, and difference to start judging, and hands up don't shoot is a perfect example of the resignification process of neoliberalism. It has become a trendy form of solidarity, evacuating any revolutionary potential. Wound off 14, and watching the quantification of movement of white people dying in mass photographing, making money off falsified photographs of black children hugging police officers in solidarity, photos of white people holding their hands up, their hands up, don't shoot white people running around like hashtag Black Lives Matter shirt that have made a purchase. This movement has something to do, has become something trendy for white people to engage in turning into anything other than what it is. Black people for justice, how neoliberals and white supremacy capitalists operate. They must find one way to dilute moral control and ultimately subjugate resistance to blackness and the reduction of our movement. A trendy commodity for white consumption is the first step, and this problem is now racism can be reduced through reform. Hudson 13, the meaning of whiteness and blackness is a series of propositions that slowly and suddenly work their way to one fund and shape one views of the world of the group which one belongs. Is how the subject position constitute all of the excluded place to consider ontological content. What goes as mean as filling and reproducing our potential meaning that signifies not determine one's follow the very framework of deciding exclusion inclusion somehow engraved in ontological some political never totally self to be sure colonialism is an ontological division. And what whites exist in way bars black that this ontological relationship rather than on the side of optic of all potentially constructed identities rather than ontology, the social which makes the ultimate unfixity, the extremency the lack of the social mark the card social now world making projects don't protect people from the world. We're not native 14, though I agree that inquiry is bouncing like I feel also familiarity makes us by the will to domesticate the encounter that will never can never be familiar with what escapes our recognized feelings, including recognition for that by virtue of those recognized feelings themselves. The familiarity to make coherence can become a good way of denying it. The eye that knows its incoherence is as you guys usually succeeded. The labor of normalizing self even when it conceived the self is inadequate to the norm structuring incoherence of queer. That self as the trainer of the consciousness of the pseudo sovereignty remain unavailable to the subject except in the rare moment of traumatic encounter moments. What the potential for shocking gets activated in the nearness of the unbearable, which is to say the enjoyment we never own our world building. Capitalism against wars that others build, which may or may not have room for us that consistent with our survival. And no matter what you think structures and institutions pervade, but plus E7 contributed seems seduced by the neoliberal fantasy that an armory good space of free, independent, and authentic individual subjectivity waits those who reject liberal rights, state power, pervade, so as the private institutions of the historical have been deeply enmeshed and constrained by the productive same historical inequalities and course of powers that pervade the state. And of course, in that cultural rights, they will recognize and enforce on individual freedom of definite identity, but of course, rights any particular left regulatory effort should be scrutinized with anything less impact if they ignore the same problematic efforts that equally challenge any less resistance to state governments unless we fall back fundamental faith and the right wing and don't read most And these interventions might be the response to a little more than feel-good measures McCluskey's having guerrilla threat, but active activists may be more liberating, transgressive, and comfortable to some U.S. activists, cause and tedious, marginalized, and morally messy involvement in federal bureaucracy, but those things provide no guarantee of level of superiority and political effectiveness in a time when pharmaceutical companies and right-wing Christians are happy to see state authority to advance their interests at the expense of millions of lives, surrounding the power to invoke the rule of law is even more pitiful than believing in the rule of law.
Are you ready?
Yes.
How am I complicit with evil?
Our argument is not that you are complicit in evil, but a view of the world that doesn't regard consequences.
So my view of the world, which does not regard the concepts you said, is an evil view.
If you say that consequentialism is not a way we should view the world, then you allow millions of people to die. That's what evil.
Okay, so I'm evil
What
now.
is consequentialism?
It's just like dealing with like consequences that might happen in the future aren't systemic, but like dealing with the possibility of them.
Okay, so how am I asking to be commodified?
We're not saying you're asking to be commodified.
You
We're
said
saying
that.
the hands up, don't shoot movement has been commodified.
Okay, cool. So my question is, you said racism can be reduced through reforms.
Yeah.
When has that happened?
Well, if you look at like history, like obviously like,
So things have gotten better.
yeah, obviously the world isn't as bad as like when slavery exists. Like there's still racism, but like it's comparatively better.
Oh yeah, I guess it is a lot better, huh?
Yeah.
Cool. So how do you test competition? Like, what does it mean to actually begin the testing of the competition when you like impact turn-ups? Like, how is this a test of competition when you're impact turning them?
We're not impact turning you. We are playing defense against your alternative and explaining why it might not shape the world. We never said like your impacts are good.
Cool. So where exactly do you actually deconstruct private prisons?
Our argument is that pretending that the plan pass is good. We also have this.
Who is pretending good for?
Hmm?
Who is pretending good for?
Everybody. Our Tate evidence also indicates that even if we.
So we're all in this together.
That's not what I said. I just
You said it's good for everyone, so we're all of us get to pretend together,
No,
right?
those, like clearly are not the same things. Our argument is that everyone can learn skills from fiating things. Our Tate evidence also indicates that even if we lose this argument, the skills that we gain from debating marijuana and like the ability to like change people's views on marijuana will be reflected
Whose
by
view have you
political
changed?
changes. I mean, just by reading the literature, I changed my own view. I hope that by reading this affirmative, I can change somebody's view, maybe the people on the stream.
Cool. All right, so I guess my question is, like, how exactly would the permutation function?
The permutation is just a test of like whether both. Or are you talking about the
Like,
permutation?
what would it look like? Yeah, your permutation on framework. What does that look like?
It's an inclusive world in which you can say whatever you want on the F. You can fiat your affirmative and like read a topical F, or you can like have a different relation.
So suggest that we can have all these styles of debate in one room and just be good.
Not in one room, but like in one tournament. Yeah. Even in
Okay.
one room is productive because we have a debate about like different starting points and different methodologies.
Alright, cool. We're starting, bro.
So,
6 people. You cut your hair. I think you cut your hair.
Yeah, a respectable dog.
Whatever that means.
take off my hair for that shit too.
You don't need a dog.
I never rebelled in college, so that's why I was kind of going through at 30.
Trying to go framework of the case. Cool. Everybody good?
This debate should be about the body, not the plan. Only our framework seeks to invigorate debaters to act in this space to affect the material conditions of racialized, sexualized violence as illustrated by the counter-performance. Being in this space makes all speech act political, sure, but it's a question of whether or not our personal politics can achieve the issue, can resolve the issues that we seek to discuss. Extend our interpretation that the AF must defend legalization of marijuana that is tied to and dependent on the body's voices of the speakers. They have conceded that nothing about this debate will change the fact that marijuana reform is happening now. It's happening now. Nothing about this debate will change the nature of marijuana legalization. They want you to vote AF on a hope and a prayer that isn't enough to stop the gravity of the anti-black violence that the 1AC is discussing about. It was discussing about all of the 1AC uniqueness arguments are reasons why pontificating about solutions are bad and why acting is good. Competing interpretations is also good. Revolutionary methods and performances are good because they allow us to recognize, work through, or amplify the ways in which our politics erase certain groups while empowering others. Debates about debates are even key to check the ways in which our argumentative exclusion for grounds or maintains literal exclusion inside and outside of this debate space. That's our marginalized voices which they don't have an answer to in the 2AC. You should extend it. It's that the plan-focused debate necessitates a discussion of USFG policy making instead of individual action. This they have conceded this marginalizes participants whose views who are currently excluded from that policy deliberation. This method displaces a discussion of material violence that forces those students to internalize the expressions of identity and exclude their argument about why we must learn the language of the elites. Is the internal link to this argument that the language of the elites is always more preferred over the language of those who are struggling on the ground, now. It's what leads to the exclusion of those marginalized bodies, even in political spaces such as the Congressman Bobby Rush, who put a hood over his head after the death of Trayvon Martin and said that he would no longer stand for police brutality, but then was told that the speaker would no longer be recognized. Those voices are historically and empirically pushed out of the political realm. Usually said a violation of the Speech Act is nothing to legalize marijuana. I already said that the 1AC is a suggestion of external action by states by the state, not individuals, debaters in the room. Nobody gets food during our after this debate. How could we trust that? How could we trust them to advocate for those individuals in the context of food if they don't even start here? Also, we have an argument. We have a doubling argument that is not answered in the 2AC. In the 2AC, their ability to call on a structure to change displaces their own culpability and forms of violence. This is the move of the white liberal. It's very convenient for individuals to say that racism is bad or capitalism is bad writ large or abstractly, but until they locate the I in the intersection, they are never able to understand how they are personally responsible for some of the actions. Their first piece of evidence after the roll of the ballot didn't flow the evidence thing. It indicates that it's important to identify with society because we need to be ashamed about sort of where we are and where we are where we are coming from, even if we're not personally responsible. This not only illustrates that you don't think that you are inherently caught up in racialized sexualized violence, which is also a link to the counter-performance, but this is the form of psychological violence that we are talking about, that forces us to identify with a society that does not even want us to be there. Also your conception of society is another link argument. There is no such thing as some sort of homogenous, totalizing society, similar to the way in which there is no such thing as just as racism as a structure. We understand that structures are built by individuals' collective actions and decisions, which is why we must start with the self rather than focusing on some sort of abstract entity that we don't even have the agency to change. Or in fact, they make an argument about why it's important to have training grounds for broader reform. There's no reforming an anti-black, anti-trans, or anti-queer world. This world was never meant for our survival. It's a conceited framing question coming out of the 2AC. Also, there's another. What do you mean a training ground? What good is you learning about the abuses that the system produces? If white people and police officers get to make up new laws on the spot. This is what Nicole's talking about how it became illegal to even stand still in front of a bus stop because people in Ferguson were already demarcated into a criminal status. They could have protested. They could have killed anybody. This demonstrates the way in which the law is always already malleable. It's always been reformed, except it does so in such a way that always pulls the rug out from under those that are most marginalized by that form of the system. It's not a question of whether or not the law can change. It obviously has. Your permutation argument doesn't make any sense. It's multiculturalism at best. Every reason we get as to why plan-focused debates are bad, or reasons as to why you should prefer ours. You also cannot permute our model of debate and also say that it's absolutely terrible because it personalizes the debate space. We think that personalizing this shit, especially when it is personal to us, is absolutely necessary because it provides us the ability to empower ourselves rather than to play pretend. There's a crucial distinction. We cannot simulate or imagine or hypothesize our skin color or our gender oppression from going away. They say that there's a disadvantage for two people not advocating for reform. You are not advocating for reform. There's no reason, even if you already said you're advocating for politics. Why the fuck is this debate absolutely necessary for you to do that shit? You're not talking in policy language. You are not presenting a bill that is. You cannot present a bill in this space. Nor are you talking to the right people that you need to talk to. They have no argument as to why debate is absolutely necessary to a passive, which means that you should privilege our model of debate because it focuses on the not only material conditions but also the theory of performance, which urges us to act in the now, which is a better internal link to all of their activism arguments. They say that they shouldn't have to talk about their experiences. You both did. You talked about how you were white and how you did not experience anything similar to what Nicole or I experienced, and you gave a story about your friend. Obviously, this is not true, and obviously, our interpretation isn't just talk about yourself, but rather what does your speech act do about the legalization of marijuana? They're going to press hard on how can we legalize it inside of this space. If you think about what legalization has meant historically, basically, it meant to just do what white people have already been doing. They want the right to assembly. They were already doing that. It could be a process of normalizing things like weed, but you did not even bring weed inside of this space, and also that we can buy weed from down the street. Nothing about the affirmative is absolutely necessary for that shit. You say that we must. You say that experience gets co-opted and naturalizes difference. This is a really shitty card. It doesn't even say anything remotely close to that. It just says that we create new ideological systems. Sure, we say that we should create an ideological system that understands the urgency of material conditions, and one that rejects ideological systems that favor theoretical discussions. Wilderson, 2008. The claim of balance and fair play forecloses upon the antagonistic argument that itself is racist and illegitimate. White people are guilty, and until proven innocent whites are guilty of reproducing concepts like fairness, mediocrity, balance, standards, norms. Most of all whites are guilty of wanting stability and reform. White people are guilty of asking themselves the question: how can we maintain the maximum amount of order with the maximum amount of change, while presenting ourselves only to ourselves as having the best of all possible intentions? Good people with good intentions. White people are the only species, human or otherwise, capable of transforming DOS good intentions to the goal of grand intentions and aiming to change. These past revolutions fire and groups of conflicts over which institutional reform is better than only one provided provide a smoke screen that keep real investor antagonisms that pay it's scientifically impossible to manufacture shinola out of shit. But white liberals keep on trying to end up spending a lifetime not knowing shit from shinola, because white people love their institutions, they love their country, most of all they love each other, and every black and brown body that doesn't love the things you love is a threat to your fantasy of space, your sacred pleasures, passive evolutions of the third way of incorporating black and brown bodies to either term of the debate. The third term of the debate, white people are guilty of structural debates where we reproduce the institution, and the institution reproduces America, and America is always and everywhere a bad thing. We will incorporate colored folks into our folder, our own case, provided that their team players speak highly of us, pretend to care what we're thinking, but then this is key, we won't entertain the ranker with shit on our fantasy space. How did that fantasy space?
How do you change police
I
officers?
did say to you I was ready. I'm still gonna mark this card.
Okay, cool. How do you train police officers and prevent them from arresting people?
How do you?
Black and Latino? We've read a bunch of cards on it. My question is, how do you? Do you
we
train
don't
them?
know the police
Nothing
officers
about
are-
this debate changes the fact that us three could get policed.
Okay,
This debate.
so you were like, we just give up. We don't even try.
No, I don't think that we have advocated that we give up. I think that we have
And what do you
advocated
do?
that
What do
we
you
do
do?
change within inside of this space. I think our counter performance is what we do.
Okay, but how does that change the police?
It
How
doesn't
does that
change the
prison
police.
industrial
It provides us a way in which we can transcend racialized, sexualized violence.
Okay, so you're smoking a J and the police arrest you. How do you transcend that?
We are able to at least provide, like, what do you mean? I'm smoking a J and the police arrest me.
Yeah, wait, how do you
That's-
transcend that?
I mean, you can't necessarily fucking transcend that. That shit is probably inevitable, at least within this fucking moment. No one can change that. But it's a question of whether or not we can provide a form of value
Okay,
that
and
no one can take
And
away
we
from
agree
us.
that's really, really bad for cops to arrest people for being black.
Right, you think it's just about the
No, but
police,
it's-
but I'm
that's
telling you,
bad.
it's more than just the police, it's the way in which our bodies are marked as criminal,
Okay,
right?
But-
So you eliminating 4 walls does nothing.
okay, so if we win that, like, these things can be reformed in institutions.
You don't reform those, fuck your institutions, they do nothing for anybody.
Yeah, we
And
agree, fuck the
particularly not
institutions
us.
right now, but if we win,
Not
they can
us,
be
they don't
reformed.
do shit for us.
Yeah, fuck the institutions right now, but if we win, they can.
You
No,
didn't say
right
that
now
in
and
your
forever.
1AC.
Okay,
In your
that's
1AC, you was like, I rocks with these institutions.
Why is the act not a recognition of shame and then an attempt to, like, reform things that are bad? You're like, you have to recognize your shame. We're like, here's some shitty things institutions do. How is that?
What?
not-
No,
You're not
that's not-
actually, pause, you're not actually recognizing your shame because you're not in the 1AC.
That,
We are the ones who
and that's an
represent
argument that you
members of
make.
the institutions of society. How do we not recognize our own shame?
Right, we are criticizing A, your conception of what the fuck society is, and B, you're the one who advanced that argument. I
Why
simply
can't you
dispute
read
it.
your F when we read our F?
Huh?
What-
We
what-
did read our F,
Right, so then how come having both these forms of education simultaneously is bad?
because our F is a straight up indictment of yours, which favors
Okay,
theoretical
yeah, so like you
conversations
read
about
an
real
answer
shit.
to our F and then we have a debate about it. What's inherently bad about
Right, we were having a debate about why your model of debate is fucked up.
it? Okay, so what's bad about including both and then having debates about which one's better?
Right, because like inclusion is something that's always happened. That doesn't mean that our bodies or our arguments get centralized. There's a crucial distinction.
But how does that answer the fact that you can do you, we can do?
Yeah, that's called segregation. That's what's literally
But how
always
is
happened.
segregation for having
You
a
do
debate?
you, we do
No,
us,
and then
on
we have-
opposite
no,
sides of the
opposite
world and we're
sides.
chill.
And then we have a debate, which seems like a direct clash and not separation.
Yeah, and then you go your separate fucking ways.
After a resolution to the debate,
What resolution?
the ballot,
Do you think that's resolution?
literally, yes.
Okay, so a ballot.
Okay. Cool.
Sorry.
Where's my one? See, the fucking bottom of our shit is falling out, bro. What do you mean expand those? I'm sorry.
I'm ready. Is everyone ready? Oh, wait, you need to turn the camera. Okay. Zarita raised me. I had to sin. Tiffany Edwards, you are always on my mind. Every time I put my hands up, I think about you. I think about your death that is never discussed or talked about. I think about the communal violence in which you face. I think about the way in which your body was something that was always opposition to the way in which this society functioned. You are that prison. We were always that prison that you cannot even fucking deconstruct. These four walls don't mean anything when your body is marketed as the prison. You are always going to be the prisoner, which is why you're going to vote next, because it's about the method of empowerment. It's about us taking these lives and empowering the way we need to begin. That's what I do when I put my hands up. I notify who the shooter is and why they are shooting at me. I recognize that I am valuable. It's something more valuable than anything that they can take home. 2006, violence, sound, connection, possibility of language, the absence of sound, speech, term, materialism, possible word of mortar words, differentiating intersections, truth about the value of the body, precise the time, possibility speaking to the body, because we don't have to trust about the infused with certain spirit, certain value that been from the outside, and the wood, therefore, crushing the decent, the way in which the body is, the way in which is the phonetic substance of the breakdown, the distinction to what is intrinsic, what is given a spirit manifested in material operations, that speaks to guard the universal materialism, the material degradation of the versus scales, or forceful generosity, a hectic amount of performance are black performance, and such performance or reevaluation, reconstruction of value of disruption is opposition, this future right, the spirit of matter, this movement comes all arguments, we can be hard to get it again, to pass down, to pass it, but responding because this is another, more than another violence to suffocation, you care about what is the ongoing forms of reappropriation, deconstruction, the reconstruction, the improvisation, the record, the reevaluation of values, the ongoing event of the anti-racial, the portal, the birth of the rebirth, the fantasy of this type of genre, the reproduction of black is the end of the reproduction of black performance, the offset, the rebound. It's impossible for the objects to resist above the other things. If they disrupture, we are exactly that disruption that makes our bodies fucking visible. We say that this is the way in which the law is always changing and operating against us, which is why you're going to prefer our roles about who best performatively methodology transcends racialized and sexualized violence. You have not even fucking uttered shit about black trans women, Latina trans women, and how this shit happens against our bodies, which is something that is problematic because we are always ignored in the white dominant liberal narrative. That is exactly why you need to prioritize these bodies and the violence that happens to them at the beginning of the discussion. We are a prerequisite to the method of the affirmative. It's about those violence that is never highlighted during prison industrial complex farm. Never talk about the way with trans queer bodies experience the prison deprivation system on a day-to-day basis. You literally have one singular understanding of what it looks like to be a president, which is justice for walls, which I think is always how whiteness tends to operate. Not only that, but we said the commodification was fucking inevitable thing. We're saying I was a fucking trans bitch. I love fucking Facebook. Not only that, but we said you say that we need to resist the police of micro and macro levels. We say it is not just the police. The very people in this room, it's the very people within these spaces. Why we're going to prioritize this space at the very beginning of where we even begin to move out of that. You said permanent vote. I said you said permanent vote because the alternative will take too long. I think the alternative is in this room. It is the now. It is what we can do. The present to transcend this violence, which is why the method of hands up, don't shoot is going to be something you prioritize. You said micropolitics get co-opted. I say non-unique. We are always living in a state of co-option. Everybody is always trying to do us better than us, but bitch, you will never be able to. You say the legalization on the war on drugs. I say the war on drugs is more than fucking marijuana. Do your fucking research. It is also crack cocaine, which is highly dedicated to the way black women's bodies operate. We are always seeing the fucking crackheads. You don't even understand what the fuck the war on drugs is, or how it has been produced on our bodies, or how it has been produced to trans bodies. You don't understand how that operates. You said permutation to a test and competition. I said people love to fucking test on trans bodies. That is problematic things because our bodies are always getting to get tested on, which is another way which you said, which is happening. No, that's what I think. It's not a test and competition. Where the fuck did you put your hands up? You fucking did it. You have it in your fucking pocket. No, that's what you said. We should engage within the system. I say fuck that. The system has already been doing the same shit to us. The first person I know that I think the system is always changing and rearranging itself. They make laws up on the spot to oppress us. Did you not fucking hear that there is not a law? The police get to make up new laws when they fucking feel like it, because that is how the system operates. The system is always changing and rearranging itself in order to do violence against us. You said, here's this Isaac card. You got me fucked up. I'm not complicit with evil, bitch. I am not a mole. I do not have tunnel vision. I can see 2020 and fuck you. You don't get to call me fucking evil for wanting to be radical and change and rearrange the way in which this shit works. And all that's some problematic, violent shit that always happens to black women when we try to do radical shit, when we try to break out the bonds of fucking slavery, when we try to rip the chains from against our body. You always call us fucking evil. And not that what you said. That you can break down the sacred industry with your Rossberg, because I said the state is not the only actor. We need to be the independent actors for change ourselves. You say the hands up don't shoot is just another trendy fucking topic. I say black is always going to be trendy. That is inevitable. Black is beautiful. So everybody wants to be a part of the way with black culture, black resistance, fucking. You said the Jones, you said we are a surrender, bitch. I have never fucking surrendered to violence. That's why I put my hands up to love, to tell people that I am not fucking surrendering, but instead it's about the way in which I rearrange and reformat the landscape that has been put against my fucking body. And all of that you said racism. You said racism can be formed, and I was like, LOL, because you're answering cross-legs. It's not as bad, because slavery's not as bad. Fuck you, you dumbass, because you don't even understand that this world is a prison. We are already still enslaved. You don't have to go through that shit, which is why you don't understand the concept of the way which social death works against our body, which is why you're going to prefer the left, because it's about the power that we can produce.
How much per player?
Pop them on with sweat. Woo!
Those devils. The devils are sweet.
Oh, thanks. Squad computers. I need to go see Toy Boy Scouts again.
Okay, 255. It's gonna be forever coming. Alright, I just sent it. Is it okay if I go to the bathroom before this starts?
I like to watch that.
Ooh, my father just fell asleep.
Okay. Like, while they're doing that, we gonna turn it off real quick.
It's only cold when that door is open.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as it closes, it's hot.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
It's so nice outside too. For some reason, they keep it open cold.
That's because it's Kansas, the weather be changing. Like, it's gonna be nice this week and probably gonna snow next week.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's nice this
As long as it doesn't snow on here.
week. I know you asked
So
us to
fuck
snow,
out,
and we
so.
was like, we was like, are you here? He's like, no, I'm just saying, Kansas, see. And I was like, oh, okay.
If
If it had snowed that one weekend I was away from Pitt, I would have been so sad.
I hate this place.
I'm from Nashville, like it never snowed. And I come to Pitt, it's like 2 months straight.
I don't rock with it.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that white that fall from the sky. You can't be my friend.
I gave an order before I went out, right? Okay.
For in the case.
The negative is extremely rhetorically powerful. There are a couple key questions that have not been grappled with. If the state is inevitable, then how should we orient ourselves toward it? Where the answer is not by refusing to engage with it and refusing to discuss the language in which it requires, but asking ourselves, how do we change it? Yes, reform of the state may always be violent and racist, and may always emanate from the state, and there may be things outside of the state that are probably pretty bad, but there are specific policies and contingent actions that we can reform to make things better and to make it easier to resist the external questions. And plus the arguments were not answered in the reply. State action is always been scapegoats. The state turns all of their their complicity argument, ignores contingencies and particular policies, which allows them to shift around and engage in all of the negative forms of reforms that they discuss, that assumes that the right wing isn't waiting to fill in the vacuum that you've created, and right controlled political will always be networks, which is a dissent to their methodology, and also proves all our co-optation arguments. A world where the political is evacuated will always be networks than one that where we performed it in the direction of their advocacy. The state is always already policing you. That's something we agree on, but they will crack down on your resistance to the state. The only effective way to check that power is through reform, except that we're on animal evidence. Whether or not you empower the world for yourself does not change the way the world will react to you, which is the framing question for this entire debate. Instead, the gnostic evidence without the ability to imagine oneself as having the ability to affect government change or within government is most people will not be able to imagine the possibility of them being able to affect others. This is why people sit around on Reddit during the Ferguson protest talking about how shit wasn't going to change anything, so they watch cat videos instead. However, they are able to interact with political campaigns that could lead to legislation. This is also a reason why any reason that we win legalization is good is a reason our pedagogical investment is valuable, whether or not we actually get the future shape based on what we think is possible. They did not effectively answer our Tate argument, which indicates that debating about marijuana policy, whether we read you the text of a bill or not, is a necessary training ground for new type of leadership. Yes, we acknowledge our shame. That was the 1AC. That was the 1AC. The legalization of marijuana gives people something to grab onto and create effective coalitions that are able to actually affect the state and affect policy. Grassroots movements are able to create pressure. It says it's the only way to reverse the trends and actually has material spillover. This is also our Franklin evidence, which indicates that starting with legalizing marijuana leads to ending the broader war on drugs, which answers there. We ignored the other things, arguments that they made on the case. If we win this argument, it means that there's no dissent to their arguments about us not affecting anything, because it proves it's not empty gesture. Next, extend the bomb argument, focusing on social experience and only things that we have interacted with blocks the vast majority of people out of the movement, undercutting the efficacy and power that a group has to perform. Instead of viewing experiences as individual, we should instead view them as a share between people with a similar epistemological framework. Experience is always an act of interpretation, which means that sharing those experiences with people who work through similar epistemological frameworks, regardless of their social location or whether they have experience, it means it will be interpreted similarly, which is interpreted similarly. Now, the permutation, this is largely a test of their structural exclusion arguments. All their dissents say that access to the state, but they say that we can access the state, but access should be viewed on a scale of good to better. If we leave the state as it is, obviously we'll continue bracketing people out, but we can chip away at the wall that puts up. It's ludicrous to assert that the world is marginally better than it was 10, 20, or 30 years ago. If you want to say fuck you to that, that's fine, but I refuse to sit on my hands. The real 1990, more than 40% of whites supported a homeowners right to discriminate on the basis of race. By 2008, the number was down to 20%. The same goes for the percentage of whites who said blacks were less intelligent than whites, which dipped from nearly 60% in 1992 less than 30% in 2008. There are intense disagreements on this treatment. We know that whites are more likely to support harsher punishment when the communist box that we made genuine gains in our time is incredible departure from relatively recent past. And if we just legalize access increases, that's our Williams argument, which we don't have an answer to. Legal weed makes it easier for the police to crack down on radical movements because it's a lot easier to say, I think I smelled weed on you while you were putting your hands up, than it is to say, I think about heroin or crack, which means that the affirmative is a necessary prerequisite to their alternative. Yeah. And if fiat these accesses are argument because our T arguments are reasons why we access this also on the new Wilderson argument. They conceded Hudson, which disproves the thesis because anti-blackness is ontological, which means that whiteness will not always be positioned in a certain way. We can shift another case. Their role of the ballot was transcendence, and then they say that it's inevitable, so you can't actually transcend, which means it's a question of how we orient ourselves. That was above an attempt to create individualized forms of power, which does nothing. The question is not to really solve all the racism. It does the active material gains. You can see that we decrease the number of cops on the streets, which decreases the amount of policing, leads to prison closures, and the prison lobby of influence, which increases the capacity for radical revolution. Not a utilitarianism argument. We're not calling you evil. Are you fucking serious? Our argument is that ignoring existential threats and letting a lot of people die would probably be pretty fucked up in the name of languages that don't actually have an impact. That have state credibility advantages and a distance to your methodology, as well as the prison's advantage. They say the prison is more than four walls, obviously, but there are still physical prisons that keep people bracketed out of the social or are used as an excuse to keep people from getting released from employment. Yeah, they extend the role of the ballot. The role of the ballot is to stimulate the enactment of the plan. They haven't extend the enactment of the plan. There's a permutation of this. You can stimulate the enactment of the plan and also look at transcending racism when only reforms are actually going to be able to actually transcend what we're talking about.
6:44. I think so. 6:24. 6:24. All right, starting now.
Oh,
Okay. Are you all right?
yeah, I just put down the tongue really hard on my finger.
That is the worst.
Not at the moment. I'll tell you what it is.
Your office, the trade drop. This one's gonna be so I'm sure there's some. You just read the Bowie 14.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
I know.
Do you have the one?
Uh,
You got the one?
almost.
Can you give me some colors?
Yeah, that's all.
Little boo?
Should start off pretty much.
Yes. Is you my boo? You can take this moment. That's because we lose my phone.
Back in paper today, I remember one time I lost my entire start politics file.
It's not how they keyboard it. I love it when you can learn.
Sometimes I get nostalgic for using paper, but then I remember that when I debated with paper, I was the messiest, most dyslexic.
We're messy, but
It would take me like 40, like all of the pre-run prep for the next day to clean up.
Just losing my start file made me so sad because that was like the one politics diss that was sick, and then I couldn't run any time for everything because I lost the start. And I've never worked with it since.
is this what a boss bitch do?
No, you're good. It's going to be framework in case. Everybody ready?
This debate is about about the individual debaters within inside of this debate, inside of this space, and the potential change that we can bring. If all, especially if all of your arguments are true, that you want to engage the state and engage those sorts of policies, then it must start with the self in this sort of space, because you must come face to face with the experiences that scream the truth about what's happening on the ground. Your arguments about the state being inevitable or not, and saying in a world in which you have conceded that the state is socially constructed by individuals who make collective actions and decisions that are anti-black and sexualized in violent ways. And so because it's socially constructed means that it can be also deconstructed, but it has to start with the self. You make an argument about why there are social policies that we should reform. There are also social laws, such as ones that dictate that we occupy the bottom rungs of society, that we are unvaluable. We attempt to flip these sorts of scripts, because these are the only sorts of laws that we have the agency to change. That continue that we don't have our hands on the levers of power to enact large sweeping structural change, and that a focus on a future in which we can one day apply the skills that we learn here is anti-black, anti-trans, and anti-queer, because that future has not been afforded to us. Tomorrow was not promised for us. The world was never tailored for our survival, which is why all we have is the bodies that are staring at you in front of your face. You say right wing fills in, but there's no difference between the right and the left. You can see that argument, especially when it comes to racialized, sexualized violence. Anyone can be an agent of that. It's no better than also the conservative, the right wing is no better than the white liberal who seeks to criticize the United States federal government for being racist, who never looks at themselves. You can see that's where they're locating the eye within the intersection. It's the only way in which we can check back your own culpability, and the way in which you can crack down on people of color. You say that we will get cracked down. You have conceded a framing argument that we've been getting cracked down now. We will get cracked down after this debate, and even in a world in which that policy would be enacted, because it's not a war on drugs, but rather a war on Black lives. Voting affirmative does not change the stigmatization or criminalization of blackness, which means it just becomes a question of different mechanisms by which agents of racialized, sexualized violence can crack down on us. You say that we should care about the rest of the world. We say that right, you should care about the world, not suggest that hypothesizing about the world is simply enough. You say we acknowledge your shame. We acknowledge the shame that you have. That's great. You should be ashamed of yourselves, because you call us evil you should call us evil first for attempting to centralize the experiences and violences that's happening on the ground that never gets talked about. This still been talked about. Serena Reyes, Mia Henderson, or Isha McBride. Those women mean nothing. Those women mean nothing to you. You make an argument about why legalizing weed gives people something to hold on to. Are you talking about weed? This argument isn't very well explained. You say that we end other war on drugs. It's not a warranted argument. You also say that experience locks out the vast majority of people out of the movement. We only lock out those agents of racialized, sexualized violence who have no reason as to why they must be absolutely necessary. We also connect the dots between what's happening here and elsewhere. You make an argument about why the world is getting better. A Black man was lynched yesterday. Also, 6 Black trans folks have already died this year, and that's all we know, because those bodies are misgendered even after their death. That's how anti-blackness intersects with anti-trans. You also say that we can decrease crackouts because we no longer smell like weed. But sure, that you're still not answering the argument about how you are still marked for your bodily presence. You say whiteness isn't always static. That's absolutely true. Whiteness is fluid. That's how our argument about the law, about how it's always changing to disadvantage us. Go to the counter-performance. Vote negative, because we are the only people who have transcended racialized, sexualized violence to our performative method of hands up. Don't shoot our method. The methodology. You have to see that a method is not simply enough. Tomorrow is not promised. We need to perform in other words, actualize lines of flight for those who are forgotten and left behind, who are standing right in front of you. This means performance outweighs because increasing the valuable value in a world in which we are unvaluable. Hands up, don't shoot allows us to articulate that there is something in front of the gun worth surviving. It allows it, even if it doesn't stop the trigger from being pulled. It still allows us to scream at the top of the lungs that we will be recognized. The one in front of the gun lives forever, because you have conceded that the collective force, the collective spirit of hands up, don't shoot allows us to empower other people to even get to the next day, to continue in the revolution of everyday life. You have conceded the mantra aspect of hands up, don't shoot, that it is the sufficient rallying cry for people in prisons, not only by a physical structure, but also by their mere bodies. The hands up doesn't shoot, doesn't stop the trigger from being pulled, and doesn't stop me from getting arrested, but the creation of the value that we create can never be stripped away from us. That's our motive evidence. You do not answer. You say that cops, the decrease in cops equals the decrease of policing. You are literally not listening to Nicole. Cops are not the only ones who kill trans women of color, or black people, or Latino people, trans women of color get killed and brutalized by the people most closest to them. Most closest to them. That's what we're talking about when we say communal violence. You said we ignore central impacts and let others die. No, we are talking about the extinction that is ongoing, unending, and in fact accelerating. Whereas you don't even know the story of your scenario. You're not even extending the advantages in the 1AR. Where is the policy education? You're not talking about food. You're not talking about food, nor are you talking about the deforestation that was in the 1AC. Only speaks to the conditional nature of the politics. The permutation is literally underexplained in the last 10 seconds of the 1AR. Don't let them play it. Don't let them bring it up. You can't impact her and talk shit about why hands up, don't shoot gets co-opted and why it crowds out other people, but also say we can do both. Also, the co-option arguments don't assume the uniqueness argument that we are advancing in the space that black is always regarded as trendy, that they will always attempt to commodify us, but our production of an invaluable value wants to steal ourselves away from that form of inevitable commodification. That's something that can never be stripped away from us. It's about navigating through this shit, not ending it.
You said 2?
Oh, okay, okay.
I'm just okay. All right.
What is WTB mean?
With family.
Mm. Okay.
The order is going to be the case. There's like a short overview on top, and then framework. All right. Everyone good? Extinction is inevitable, deforestation deforestation is coming now. What you're going to do is ensure the collapse of critical biodiversity hotspots, which means that there's collapse in the larger food chain, which means that everyone has animals, peoples, and nature. If we win that we get access to the app, then we have won the debate because it is the only hope you have for survival and the continuation of politics towards a better world, especially when they're conceding utilitarianism. Utilitarianism means that even if they severely reduce our risk of solvency as an ethical actor, you have an obligation to use whatever limited power you have to try and reform these institutions in order to save everybody. They've conceded this is the ethical framework for the round, and they did not do any impact comparison in their last speech. You must default towards utilitarianism. Do what you can to save everybody. Even if we lose the framework today, we still get access to the app because they have not done a good job on the taint evidence trial explained later, but they also did not extend a role of the ballot in the 2 hour, which is pretty damning because it means the only role of the ballot is to simulate the hypothetical enactment of the plan. Also, we have the only external impact. We both have different methodologies to deal with the pressure, but they do not have any attempt to save humanity, which means that it is an easy thing to hang your coat on the or hang your hat on the end of the debate. We both do a pretty good job of reforming society and making it better, but we also save everybody and allow for the necessary precondition for society to exist. Now, framing question for the rest of the debate is a question of whether you want to try or resign to fatalism. They conceded in crossings they did not attempt to reform broader institutions. They conceded that they were smoking in jail. The cops will still arrest them for being black or Latino. We orient our private politics towards the political and trying to broader and trying to reform broader institutions. We know we have limited power. We recognize that we will probably not reform the system, but it's a question of trying to save the millions of people who are unjustly put in prison every day, stripped of their social life and their ability to influence politics. They also conceded the Williams evidence that are after the necessary precondition for their alternative and the ability to have politics, because hands up, don't shoot will always be co-opted. You do not have it's hard to have value to your life when you are put in prison, told you mean nothing, and certain bodies are deemed as not valuable by outside institutions. Now, the case debate, they have conceded a couple of solvency takeouts to their method. First, our Vermont Nadelman evidence, which indicates that making a better world for yourself does not alter broader institutions. You can add value to your life, but at the end of the day, the cops will still come put you in fucking jail. They've also conceded our McCluskey evidence, which indicates that orientation away from the political only allows the political to get worse because neoconservatives, et cetera, take over and co-op movements and make the world a worse place. They have to be held accountable for the way their methodology performs will be interpolated. Sure, the state is social construct, but there's no universal starting from the self or hands up, don't you will make the most that you disappear. And more interprets vacuum in the political where police will increase their protests and get shut down, and their abandonment of law will justify the continuation of anti-black policies rather than taking tools and money away from them. The right and the left are not the same. Neoliberal government will always be networked to romanticize the utopic right of the self, and market will justify things like unlimited gun ownership and standing your ground wars for the war on drugs, refusing to engage in the state, fuels the narrative of modern neoliberalism, which is an intent and which is an external deceptive methodology. Yes, state reform matters, even if the social structures there are still material and legal pretenses created that makes that easier, even if commodification is inevitable to relative degrees. Now, they say the cops are the only oppressor, but it's a question of whether we are better than the status quo. We never claim to solve all oppression, but we can agree that the cops do fucked up things. We can agree that private prison industrial complex does bad things, which is why we should deal significant blow to it. They say there is extinction now, but we deal with most systemic violence and broader extinction. Now, the permutation is a question of if their performance was mutually exclusive with the introduction of their affirmative. They did not explain one single trade-off or one single reason they cannot both exist within the same world. We create value now for the permutation. We create value now for people, but also orient agency towards institutions in order to assure that people are not put in jail while they have that value. It does both good things. It is a good thing on top of a good thing. We can play solvency defense and test competition, and we think that your method might not be the best. We think the combination of our methods is the best stuff. It's the best political form. Now, concession of the role of ballot is damning. Now, it's explained above. They conceded that they cannot affect police, which means that the alternative can never resolve it, which means the alternative can never resolve institutional politics. We must orient our personal politics towards the political, which is our McCluskey argument. Yes, we can start from a place of experience, but we have to use what we learned from that experience and use it to change broader institutions, which is what the permutation does. Now, concession of Hudson evidence means that civil society and the state at large can be reformed, which means a lot of their offense goes away. A lot of their offense about inevitable demarcation of the black body as criminal goes away. The identity is an ontological void that is filled with sociotemporic situations. There was a series of sociotemporic situations, the Middle Passage, et cetera, that made the black body be demarcated as criminal, and we can reverse those sociotemporic situations by a set of reforms, i.e. things like the app, which can add back in social life, which is the explanation of the Williams argument. But they've also conceded our only evidence from the 1 AR, which indicates that the world has gotten better, which means that we are going with an empirical example and analysis of how reform is working. Now, the active recognized shame, that was our 1 AC prison event. We realize we are complicit in this, but we just think that we should orient our complicity towards institutions. They conceded that we end the war on drugs more broadly, which means that things like crack, et cetera, will probably be legal in the world after they have our app, and our app shame as an orientation of personal politics. We didn't call you evil, but rather we said that disregarding consequences is complicity with evil, because millions upon millions of people fucking died, which is really bad. The person's advantage recognizes the violence on these women and these bodies, etc., even if we didn't specifically name them. The Tate evidence is a reason that even if we lose these arguments, we get access to our politics. Our Tate evidence indicates that educating people about marijuana and teaching people the political skills they need to engage with institutions and put their hands on the lever of power ensures that reform will happen. Even if we never get our hands on the lever of power, the fact that we have taught people means that politicians reflect their constituency, which means that laws are more likely to change bombers. Another reason the permutation works really bad because we share a similar epistemological framework, which means that even if we never had these experiences, we can still take value things from them and interpret them the same way and use them. Similarly, for politics, arguing about black people getting killed now is just uniqueness for the actual reason that it needs to be done. Yes, whiteness is fluid, which proves our optic arguments. It proves that all identity is fluid and that all identity can be changed, which means that we can change the criminal status of black people by not making them criminal anymore, by literally taking police off the fucking street. Well, they conceded utilitarianism and they conceded the role of God. There's no way you can do that.
I like your shoes.
Do you need anything, Sean? Not right now, though.
I'm gonna be back to this one long TV.
You said this was
Yeah,
This is
that's fine. Cause I'm cleaning up, so that's my piece of dirt. No problem, babe. vote.
Oh, yes.
Who was alive? Yeah, sorry.
Give it a try.
Sure, yeah. Nice guitar.
Do you want to be in chaos?
Just realized you have a Waffle House.
Oh, this Waffle House. There's so much Waffle House in the South.
I found this debate really hard to resolve, but I voted for the affirmative because I do not think that the negative wins that the app is a bad idea. I think the negative wins that the negative is better, the negative performance is better rather, and that the app has shortcomings, i.e. Doesn't really change the nature of what a prison is. Can't really change the ontological position of Black people, Black women, trans women in particular, since they don't talk about them, and doesn't really do much for the now. But the affirmative, I think, does when that reforms can work, that their orientation towards reform is good, that they have a good epistemology, and that the plan is a good idea, and that if the plan is a good idea, that their pedagogy can be a good idea. And so I think that the way in which the app orients themselves is not bad. In order to vote negative, I think the negative would have to win perhaps the framework argument flat, as in don't evaluate the affirmative's fiat, which I don't really do. The affirmative asserts that the negative doesn't go for a roll of the ballot, but the negative goes for framework, which is fundamentally a roll of the ballot. And the first thing the 2R says is this debate is about individuals and how individuals debate and use their potential for change that we can bring. And I think that in evaluating that, I'm kind of left with the option of hands up, don't shoot versus orienting ourselves towards advocating for reform. The hands up, don't shoot argument doesn't seem to be an opportunity cost to the affirmative, meaning to vote, if I were to vote affirmative, I don't think I'm foreclosing the option of hands up, don't shoot. But I do think if I vote negative, I am foreclosing the option of engaging in reforms and politics. I do think that that's just the nature of them being affirmative and you being negative, and the negative forcing choice between the two. But I'm not exactly certain why the plan is a bad idea. And it is important for a couple reasons. One, it's a prerequisite argument about why radical movements are co-opted or prevented just because you're going to be locked up. Secondly, is the affirmative results in perhaps just net less police. I'm not buying the results in freeing or legalizing crack or deforestation or anything like that, but just the more simpler claims.
So like, you're talking, I first want to ask about like winning the framework flat. So you first said don't evaluate the SVI. Like what else did I need to do on framework?
Reasons, I think the negative lost sight of reasons why plan focus is bad. Yeah. And why it's unlimiting. Those just kind of things that make it a framework argument as opposed to a roll of the ballot argument. A roll of the ballot argument, well, as it ended up being in the roll of the ballot nature, it's just about who has a better method almost. It's just like we approach debate one way, they approach it another way, as opposed to their approach to debate is not educational, it's not fair, and you shouldn't even evaluate it or allow it on like a procedural grounds. So I think that that's the approach towards winning framework outright. And if you do that, then I don't have to evaluate their app kind of business. But separately, it's just kind of what I think you've done is kind of done more of an internal link takeout, which is don't evaluate fiat for them. So I'm not going to allow them to fiat their solvency, right? But they were effective at saying we don't need to fiat our solvency. Advocating is good. We're advocating it for the live stream, and so it can eventually result in policy change. And if our policy advocacy is good, then our kind of epistemology is also good, and our pedagogy is also good. So they kind of back into their defense of their approach to debate by using their policy itself. And so it became like a substantive thing. So it's like, then you need kind of a substantive argument about why their policy is bad. And your reasons as to why their policy is bad is just really about why their performance is bad. And I think that you're right, like you're not talking about all of the Black women that we list continuously, and you just add them in on your et cetera, give your speech about wanting to save all of humanity, even though we've been talking about a specific set of people that you continually ignore. It's like, I'm with you on so many of those things, but they're not like independently impacted as, you know, failure to talk about or centralize Black women or Black trans women in your policy is damning and a reason to vote against you. Not because it means you can't save as many people as you claim to save, but just because those policies themselves should be rejected outright.
Yeah.
These types of impact arguments for what they've left out and reasons why their performance is bad has to be connected into policy. One of the things you had going on earlier in the debate is the materiality argument about the materiality of discourse and why what we say matters. And so I think arguments about the nature of their discourse and why it has material impacts on Black women, Black trans women, i.e. they've excluded them in this debate, which means they're excluded out of their policy and it results in bad things for them, right? So it's kind of like, you need to do the thing that you want them to do, which is link their discourse to policy.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. Just I guess like, what do you think we could have done better to kind of like hedge against these arguments and make the debate more of like a slam dunk, like close more doors, I guess?
What do you mean?
Just like you're like kind of at the top, like these are like the things like they could have done to like win the debate. How do you think we could have like better closed those doors and like hedged back against those possible ballots? I guess just like what could we have done better, honestly?
You have the right arguments. I prefer the 1AR over the 2AR. I thought the 2AR's collapse to utilitarianism, focusing on humanity, was a move away from the 1AR's. You know, our app can has a comparative advantage for people of color, reduce policing, allow for reforms. Kind of that very focused part of the debate I thought was much better than a generalized, just old school policy, util good, focus on humanity, fuck Black women kind of situation. Because if I were in a mood, some kind of a mood, I could just say, I'm just gonna vote against you for that or something. Or I could have constructed some reasons to just say, not mentioning names, going on, et cetera, your focus on humanity, kind of shift in the 2AR. I think that was kind of really, I don't know what I think maybe they would respond differently to the 2AR than the 1AR. So I kind of had that kind of feeling of, I don't know what to do with this. So I guess my response is rely more on the 1AR.
Do you think we should just like punch the FDA credibility stuff and just focus like on like the permanent terms?
I don't think FDA credibility was going to help you because the other problem that you had in this debate, a big argument that you conceded is the now versus the future, which is internal link takeout for what you can kind of claim to do. They make arguments about how Black people are not promised a future. And so all of your, what we're going to do and change we're going to bring is nothing. And so the now. But the reason why I think that you have a now argument is just based on your orientation in epistemology towards reform and towards policy change in this area that can be effective for many of the people that they identify, even if not in all of the ways that they identify.
Okay, so just like a different like 2AR frame.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Is there a way that we can articulate the counter-performance better?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, did you think that the 1AR did a good job of telling you what the counter-performance was and how it operates?
No.
Okay.
Yes and no. I get the counter performance and what it does. And that's why I was able to conclude at some point, it's like, okay, the negative counter performance is better. It's better for you as individuals and the individuals you identify. So hands up, don't shoot. We have all the arguments about why, it doesn't, even if it doesn't stop anything, it's important for us to be able to do that. What does it mean for you to win that argument though? If you win that argument outright and by itself, why is that a reason to vote for you?
Right.
I guess is the question I'm left with, which is hands up, don't shoot is more effective, a more effective form of resistance for you. Now what?
Okay, that's a good question.
Because it doesn't say anything about the app. They just don't do it.
So
it's kind of like their failure to do it then has to be a reason why to vote against them, or it needs to be some framing argument about why you vote for us if we prove that we have a more effective form of resistance. I don't know what that framing argument is. It's the difference between, like, it's just not applied to them as like the reason why they're bad. It's why you're good, and it doesn't quite give me a reason why then I vote for you.
If we couple like the fact that it's good for us with the argument that you suggested we make about why their failure to talk about the people that we identify as outright just fucked up, and therefore we should advance survival strategies for those individuals. Like, do you think that's a stronger way?
Yeah, critiquing their performance, again, connecting their performance to their policy, the way in which they engage you in this debate is the exact reason why their reform will fail. Because like they're still kind of benefiting on a generic explanation of a reform and policy change. But I'm sure you have zero trust for them or their policies. And the way in which you can prove why no one should have trust is by pointing out what's going on in this debate.
Yes,
According to the 1AC, how they've debated.
Absolutely.
And that is indicative of how this reform will go down, i.e. it won't be much of a reform.
I know what you're saying.
Do you have any suggestions for how the 1 NR could have been more succinct and maybe made the 2 NR a little harder?
More succinct.
Or like what framing issues maybe we're missing?
Well, I mean, I do think that you could have done more on the permutation page just because it ultimately is relevant. And I haven't used language of permutation, but I'm talking essentially about permutation, right? Which is just that your app and hands up, don't shoot can coexist. They haven't coexisted in this debate. But a theory about just competition, about why the negative has to prove the app to be a bad idea, why if the affirmative has a comparative advantage over the status quo, why that's the reason to vote for the affirmative, even if you can't access all people in all instances, being clear about isolating what you exactly can do, which I think is the 2 instances of decreasing policing and resulting in less people being locked up so then they can go burn shit down. I think those types of isolating, here's what we can do for the people you identify, and that's the reason to vote for the app. And then sealing out some of the other stuff. And by sealing out, I just mean like making sure, like if you kind of have that kind of framing argument and you're zoning in on what you can win, then you can spend a little less time, I think, on some of these other issues.
I just had one more question, Sean. When you said that we were doing pretty good on like the more frameworking arguments, are you talking about like 2 and C? Like, is my 2 and C on framework enough to get the job done? No. Can you give me some advice? Sorry.
First of all, if you're ever going to extend anything ever, you should probably just start with your shell. And so like all of your shell arguments, the limits, the process counter plans, and the types of debates that plan focused debates allow, all of those as bad, none of those made it into the 2 and C. So you should start there, that would help. Because in the end, there was none of those kind of fairness arguments and none of those kind of like how we should debate arguments. It eventually quickly devolved into you don't talk about individuals and you don't allow for us to talk about
a framing argument rather than a framework argument,
right? Which is, yeah, exactly, which is the difference between if I win this, I win the debate versus if I win this, you evaluate my other arguments. And the arguments for why you would win the debate is explaining why their model of debate is bad. And the reason actually why it's bad is how it played out in this round, which is it forces the negative to have to win a link argument. You have to prove the affirmative to be a bad idea, right? Come after them and prove that legalization is a bad idea, as opposed to proving that your own strategy of resistance, hands up, don't shoot, is effective. In this instance, why can't I compare these two, right? I can't because you have to prove the act to be a bad idea, which is kind of traditional default framework that I've defaulted to and that they've kind of been pushing. But that has consequences for how it is that you're allowed to debate and what kind of debates you end up with. I'm not sure that I would prefer this, by the way, but it wouldn't allow for this kind of thing.
Can you just?
It's probably because I'm on the wireless. I have to go back onto the.
Thank you so much. I apologize.
Thank you, Charlotte.
You're welcome.